Good evening. Welcome to this month's Town Administrators Report. I'm David Watts Jr., and with me is our Town Administrator, Steve Maio. Steve, welcome back.
David, how are you?
Good.
Nice couple of days off, not too many, but
We took
nice
a
summer.
2-month hiatus from the show. And also with us is our new Director of Public Works, Joseph Conway. Joseph, welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
Joe got no days off in that time frame.
So, Steve, for my research, you provided me with the letter you wrote to the town council recommending Joe be made the director
Yes.
after Rick Stinson retired. And I'll let you talk a little bit about that.
Well, anyways, Joe's been has done almost every job in the Department of Public Works, from laborer all the way up to assistant director. And we did go through a pretty lengthy process. And he was acting as the director both while Mr. Stinson was on vacation and after he retired. But we did go through a pretty extensive process where we advertised the job in a number of publications that were DPW-centric, had over 20 people apply. Had a 9-member screening committee with 3 members of the public as well as some department heads and what have you. They interviewed, I believe, 12 people for the first time, then brought a number of them back for a second interview and sent 4 on to me, Joseph being one of them. I interviewed 4 of the candidates, and I would have to say I am thrilled. Because by and large, the only candidate that had the entire package, plus an intimate knowledge of Wakefield, was Joe. But he was the only one who has managed all facets of a DPW, from the financial side to the operations side to having a water and sewer treatment plant, water treatment plant, and having our own. Having a sewer system. A lot of towns don't. They have septic. Snow and ice removal. I mean, we had a number of candidates that hadn't had snow and ice removal experience. So I was convinced. The town council voted, and it is the town administrator's appointment under the charter, subject to ratification by the town council. Town council ratified at a 7-0 vote. And what was really pleasing to me was that during that vote, a lot of the members of the DPW department were there to support Joe and support the decision, which is really nice to see. And these were, again, people from laborers to supervisors of, I think every division supervisor was there, which to me was very heartwarming. And we even had members of other departments there to support Joe. So I'm looking forward to working with him. And he's done a great job. He has the confidence of certainly of myself and the entire council. So we're ready to hit the ground running. Okay. And now there's a couple of potholes we got to talk about.
No.
But I think that's the important thing is that he has had experience in so many areas of the DPW over the, how many years have you been?
I've been with the DPW full-time since November of 2007. So I'll be approaching year 13 relatively quickly.
And also you're originally from Wakefield.
Born and raised.
Yeah. So what are some of the important areas that you're going to be looking at as director that may differ from what Rick Stinson did?
I think there are a lot of things. So one of the interesting things about someone like Rick retiring is, at least for me in the position that I was, the mentor has kind of taken me under his wing for quite a while now, was gone. But I'm also in a unique spot where Rick inherited a lot of tough times through the 2000s and budget cuts and things like that. And there's some things that he's been working through the years to put together and build the foundations of that now I'm going to get to see implemented and worked on. So certainly it'd be my goal to carry out some of those tasks like that. As far as anything differently that Rick did, it's tough to say right now. I think for the time being, my goal is to steer the course. We have some projects that are, in the queue and on schedule to finish before winter of this year.
Mhm.
We have some other things in the spring that are going to take off. So be more seeing that through because the budget that's been put in place is in place, and the capital program that's been put in place is in place. So we do have all those things that we need to fulfill.
These are the ones that were voted in at annual town meeting.
Correct. Yep. So it's carry on the mission through that. I'll spend a lot of time listening and learning and reaching out to people to try to get a gauge or a temperature as to what some things that either, our employees, other constituents inside of Wakefield, town departments, citizens are certainly looking to have accomplished or see.
Mhm.
They're the driver of what we do. One of the big things that we will do is we'll be taking more of a narrowed focus on roads. So that's going to be something that I personally, and I think the whole team with me, really like to see get up to speed, get the funding for it, and really make an impact on it.
Well, that's one of the ongoing complaints around town
Mhm.
is the state of a lot of the roads within the town. And we live in New England. Winters beat up roads terribly, but we seem to be somewhat behind some of our surrounding communities.
Well, we went through a long period of time where we only were utilizing Chapter 90 funds
Mhm.
for roads, many, many years. And I'm not going to say that was by design, but there were a lot of different projects going on. Joe was right. We came through the Great Recession,
Mhm.
2008. In 2008, we had the state cut our aid by $500,000 mid-year, which was, we had to scramble and make that up in the rest
Mhm.
of the year. So those things happen, and certain parts of the infrastructure had to be slowed, okay? I think you can always rebuild some of these things, but sometimes programs are harder
Mhm.
because once they're dead, they're gone. So we went through a tough time, went through a time where we were putting in, all capital was $250,000 a year. Now it's over $2 million. We were also putting more money into roads, but to me, what is most exciting about the road projects is that, well, A, they're going to get done. That's the most exciting thing. All right, they are going to get done and rapidly. But the most exciting thing is the tool, the analytical tool that has been developed by, Joe and Rick and the engineering department there,
Mhm.
and how we grade roads, how we set them up, and how we move forward in having a comprehensive plan to not get into this again. I mean, we had to concentrate on reserves and building all those things up, and we've done that. So maybe you want to explain a little bit about that tool and how you grade them. And
Sure. So, like I said, one of the things that Rick had been putting together through some time, a few years back, he invested in taking a different approach to things.
Mhm.
But like any good program, you want to run it through its course a few times to make
Sure.
sure that if you're going to use the analytics and data, to deliver an end product, you want to make sure that it's going to turn out the results that you're expecting.
Mhm.
Finally, we're at the point right now where it's basically gone through beta testing and is ready to roll out fully. The thing with streets is when they reach a certain level of depreciation, 100 being brand new in absolutely fantastic shape, 70 being graded at about a C. Once you start to dip below that, the costs rise substantially. So it's our goal to identify the streets that are depreciating into that level where the cost is about to rise
Mhm.
and stop that before it gets there. Because you go from paying, a certain dollar amount to resurface a roadway to a certain dollar amount plus 40% because deferred maintenance is, sent it into a state of
Right.
disrepair that requires more work. So that's part of it. The other part of it is lining up all the other things.
Mhm.
Any road that we'll be focusing on, it's going to start at what lies beneath the street. So the end goal is that water sewer will coordinate with gas to make sure they're all set if it's there. The drainage will be taken care of. We'll look at the sidewalks and the curbing that's in the roads. And then the last thing we're going to do is lay on a brand new street.
Mhm.
And hopefully it'll spend about 15 years or so before we have to give it any more serious need of attention.
And that's what happened with the street that I live on, Greenwood Avenue. Over a 3-year period, They replaced the low pressure gas with
Right.
high pressure gas, did whatever else needed to be done, put in new curbing because we're within, a short distance of a school,
Mhm.
put in new sidewalks, and finally the street.
The approach would be to be as holistic as feasible,
Mm-hmm.
or advantageous.
Mhm.
There are some places with nice granite curb reveal that maybe isn't an issue, and there are other areas where it's missing that we'll be looking to plug that in
Right.
to develop consistency. But basically, what we do is we've invested in a tool where self-evaluation through our staff at Public Works, and then we use a hired consultant that comes out every 5 years, and they'll evaluate the whole roadway. And then there's a timer built into it that shows you your depreciation,
Mhm.
and basically uses a forecasting model to figure out where are the streets that are heading into a depreciation range are going to drive our costs up. And if we can get to those and plan to be at those before they reach that level, we should see a substantial savings. And in that too, so right now the goal rating of every road in Wakefield is an 80. Currently, we metric out at around 69,
Mhm.
which is consistent. The American Society of Civil Engineers rates America's infrastructure at around a D+. So our roadways are right there with that.
Mhm.
So through some funding, we've been working a lot with Steve to try to be creative with things to maximize our dollars being spent and really have a planned, pragmatic approach to things.
Mhm.
We should be able to see that trend upwards in the next coming years. So it's exciting to finally see. It probably won't happen this fall. What we want to do is get the word out. We
Yeah.
have a presentation to get to people to kind of explain to them our mindset, our thought process, and then some of the ways that if we invest X, the return is, this. If we invest another dollar figure, and it kind of shows some trajectory on how we can get the overall rating of the streets up to where they probably should be.
So we should probably see this whole program really hitting its stride by the next annual town meeting
Probably.
next year.
Yeah,
So
that's the goal.
The goal for us is there are a handful of people that have seen the presentation. Councilor Dombrowski asked at one of the meetings if we had sort of a way that we rank based red, green, yellow. And as he was saying that, I was actually excited because he was asking for something that we had.
Right.
We were just waiting to make sure that it was something that delivered the results that we wanted before
Yeah.
we could let everybody know. So our intent at Public Works this year is we'll be presenting it to the council. We'll be bringing it to FinCom. We'll invite the public in to see it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll more than likely present it at town meeting just so people can see it in the fall. And it'll be up on the website. And it'll be repetitive to get everybody to understand. It's not something that was put together super technical.
Mhm.
We made it easy so people can understand it.
Sure.
It basically says where we are, where we'd like to be, and here's some of the means and methods of how we're going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
So it should be an exciting time to see all that start to take shape and deliver a good end product on the street.
What are some of the other priorities that DPW will likely be looking at under your stewardship over the next few years?
Obviously, customer service.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of great things for the town. I think that's always something that you can improve on no matter how well you are. So
Mhm.
listening, getting the ear of the constituent to find out what they're interested in and having them have some input on, what they'd like to see. So that's definitely one of them. Again, tackling more infrastructure related work. I hate to say getting back to basics, but getting back to basics. So
Mhm.
maintaining, our water infrastructure, our sewer and our drain to make sure that that's ahead of the roads program and
Right.
different things like that. Being creative and thinking outside of the box, I think, is something that I would probably like to champion and see if we can maximize our efficiencies in
Mhm.
some of the deliverables that we put together. So that's certainly something that I'd like to focus on too. And then one of the big things is monitoring the current status of refuse and recycling in the changing markets. So right now we have a refuse contract that the collection side, we're all set for a little while. We're under contract. There's a second piece where we're going to have to go out and get a new contract for the disposal piece.
Mm-hmm.
That's the processing of everything that's picked up. And then
Mhm.
recycling will be coming around again soon. So paying attention to the markets, paying attention to the trends, trying to stay ahead as best as we can. And then in the end, balancing the fiduciary piece with the service piece to deliver the best to the residents that you can
Sure.
is definitely the goal. But that's something that's going to take time.
Hmm.
Right now, we're trying to develop longitudinal trend data, so we're not hit by a surprise or a curveball. That would be probably one of the other focuses.
Since you brought up refuse, it hit the item last night, and this is last night relative to our tape date, that's changing. Russell is now getting out of the game, and not really a new contractor is taking over. It's the same contractor that's been handling the recycle program for several years now.
Yep. So that was something, our contract with Russell was coming to an end of the term, and it was time to go back out to, competitive requests for proposal. Russell has since gotten out of the business. I think the folks over there have been doing it so long that they're ready for a break, I would imagine, and it's time for them to concentrate on some other things.
Right.
So myself, Rick Stinson, the team at Public Works, put it out to RFP, and we had about 6 companies come back to us with proposals. It just so happened to work out that the balance of best service and best value and pricing went to JRM. And coming this fall, you'll see there'll be a transition where Russell will pass the baton to them and JRM will be taken over. There won't be any major program changes that'll be drastically different. A couple of things won't look exactly the same, but nobody's trash day is going to change up front, and we're going to try to make this as seamless as possible. So I would say to everybody out there that may or may not be watching that in the next coming weeks, you'll see we'll be flooding information out there to make sure that, weeks in advance that people are aware, and that if they have any questions, we'll give them means to reach out so everything can be, discussed and listened to coming up.
But really, the changeover should be nothing more than instead of seeing a Russell truck, you see a JRM truck.
Pretty much. There'll be some other slight differences, but the name on the side of the truck will change. And, there may be one or two other things that might change with it. We have one more kind of logistical meeting to dot the I's, cross the T's, and really narrow in our focus. They're going to help us with some of the outreach so we can make sure people are aware. And hopefully at that point in time, it will be as seamless as we all hope it could be.
But basically for the homeowner.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be, you're still going to roll your trash barrel out and put it in the same spot.
Day, yeah.
The arm will come from a different part of the truck and pick it up, but that's, no big deal.
Sure. Absolutely.
But that is a huge market. That's going to have a huge effect on the communities, our community, other communities going forward, is the cost of trash disposal, how to better recycle and how to pay for that, and how to help the planet.
Well, and also where
so
it's going.
That's a huge issue. Exactly what we're going to talk about. The whole global market has changed. I mean, I remember years ago when we looked at, are we going to make money on the recycling? Are we going to sell the recycling for X? I mean, those days, maybe they'll come back someday, but I don't know. But there are going to be more opportunities, so we're going to have to very carefully look at that.
I wouldn't say that those markets are, you read about it and you see, I believe it was 60 Minutes just did a thing on recycling over in Southeast Asia. I'm not prescribing to the doom and gloom. I don't think our team is. I think that the industry is in sort of an adjustment period. And
no, actually, there are great opportunities because now there are also some ideas and some techniques that are being worked on domestically where they won't go overseas. We'll do the recycling here, and it's going to mean a change in some of the materials themselves, some of the chemistry. But that could be an industry that will now take the place of some of the other industries that have gone away for technological reasons or globalization reasons.
Sure. I mean, we're well aware of, kind of the temperature of the conversation with it too. So like I said before, we're not afraid to think out of the box and be creative. So we're looking for grants to maybe lessen any potential impacts or offer more service. So we'll be going after that pretty heavy.
Another area that the DPW is very big in Wakefield that doesn't happen in every other town is water.
Yeah.
We have our own reservoir. And now the water plant is well over 100 years old, but the equipment inside has been kept pretty much up to date.
So the treatment side of the plant is relatively on the new scale,
Okay.
but the garage where the tools, none of the vehicles fit inside, but where our employees wash up at the end of the day and
Mhm.
basically store anything they can't freeze or be exposed to the elements is, you're correct. It's aging. It might be around 1920s when it was built.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
but they do a fantastic job of what they have. And, they're out there in the middle of the night
Right.
doing a lot of things a lot of people don't see, but I think it's one of those things it's easy to take for granted, but when you get up in the morning and you can't brush your teeth, the light bulb goes off that something's not right here.
Well, and it has kicked in at the most important times, like when we lost that MWRA main
Yes,
line
yeah,
a few
yeah.
years ago.
Right.
Mhm.
I think one thing we proved at that time is that we could and can,
Mm-hmm.
for a limited time,
Mm-hmm.
service the whole town.
Mm-hmm.
And we can shut off the MWRA gates at certain areas. What really bothered us at that time was they wouldn't take us off the boil order,
Right.
and we weren't even using their water at the
Right.
time. But that's okay. That's a whole other issue with that.
That's a political
That's a
issue
political
as opposed
thing.
to yeah.
But we did prove that, and
Yeah,
Joe's even made some changes because there is that, part of the assessment from the MWRA is water usage from the MWRA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so by maybe looking at high peak times, by using more of our water at high peak times, less flow is coming in. Maybe that's going to help us a little bit down the road with the assessment cost.
Right.
So that was very creative on Joe's part to make a little change in how that water treatment plant is used and the personnel and how their hours were. So that was really,
If I can give credit where credit is
Mhm.
due, Steve Fitzpatrick,
Our water
the water
superintendent.
and sewer superintendent,
Mhm.
has been really eyeballing all of this and trying to come up with, a plan to minimize our impact or try to lessen it from the
Sure.
MWRA, but also educating the folks that work for him too. So now, one of the first times in my tenure, we've had 2 treatment plant operators that are able to operate the plant. Typically, it was done by one individual.
Mhm.
So, as Steve said, if you have one of those instances where water is impacted, we do have the luxury of being able to isolate ourselves and be
Mhm.
self-sufficient for the time being. The most recent example of that is they had a little bit of trouble on the Stoneham and Winchester line with the MWRA and a pipe leak due to some construction.
Right.
Yep.
We were able to react, shut ourselves off from that particular section. We kept our pumping going a little bit longer, but the effect to Wakefield was null.
Right.
So it's a nice thing to have going on
Good
for
to
you.
know.
Yeah.
Another project that involves the DPW, not just in the project, but in the facilities that they need, is the Boudiette building on North Avenue.
Mhm.
And that's come up for replacement a couple of times. Where are we with that project?
So the Permanent Building Committee, through town meeting, has gotten some funding to conduct a feasibility study.
Mm-hmm.
It's no secret that Wakefield doesn't have an abundance of land to just develop these types of things. So they have to look into trying to configure the site that they have now at 35 North Ave into something more usable. So they'll be sending that out to RFP to consult with engineering firms and
Mhm.
architects to see if there's a plan where we can make something that's more efficient than the current setup of multi-buildings and being spread out all over town now. So they're running with that one at the moment. There's been input from Public Works.
Mm-hmm.
There's a subcommittee that has some input, and I would imagine in the fall that'll be out and we'll be entertaining some ideas. And depending on what we get back, we will either be able to push forward with it or have to go back to the drawing board and retool some things.
Something else we may see at the next annual town
Yeah.
meeting.
Maybe, but
No, there's a lot of infrastructure projects that DPW is intimately involved in. Public safety building,
Yep.
DPW garage. There will be a high school project
Yep.
that will be
they'll
relying
have
on
to be.
DPW on.
Yeah.
Chop up the roads. The other thing is the water quality at Lake Quannapowitt, which is something that I know is near and dear to your heart.
And
As
we've
a
talked
avid
about it a number
kayaker,
of times. Yeah. Yeah.
That is something that is we are also looking at in a number of different angles. One of which is to make sure that the water that's flowing into the lake on our, our stormwater runoff and what
Yeah,
have
yeah.
you, is as a highest quality as we can, because that's just adding to the problem. And, we've done a really
Well,
good job.
all the fertilizers and
Yeah,
other things that
exactly.
people put on their lawns have
Exactly.
have
And that's kind of lessened.
exacerbated the weed
That's lessened because you
problem.
can't get
Right.
a lot of that anymore. But years beforehand, Wakefield was kind of ahead of the game and on our land,
Right.
on our public places. But we were using, Dennis Fazer did a great job there, the rest of the department. So that's an issue, redoing some of those culverts, doing that, making sure the stormwater comes through. In fact, we have a project set up for the end of Quarter Street that's going to help out with some of that coming up.
Yep. So that was one I'd say the environmental impact
Mm.
and sustainability is always part of the equation.
Mhm.
And wherever we can get it in to make sure that it's a high impact, we do. So the end of Quarter Street at Main Street, you'll see some upgrades there to the stormwater runoff so that
Mhm.
before it hits the lake, there's some treatment that happens. And there'll be some other ones that come up probably through the next year that we've identified as, potential advantageous locations to us to do some work because, again, the investment is totally worth the end result. So
Sure.
it's something that you'll start seeing again and again and again and again.
Excellent. So more to come.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is never a day that your inbox is completely empty. Again, it's the one thing you're not used to.
This is true.
This is true.
This is
There's
true.
always something else coming in and you
Yeah.
can do more on.
Yeah.
But that's great. That's great. That's what we're there for.
Yep. But it seems like, because DPW also has the responsibility for school maintenance and everything
Right.
else. I know recently the SBA passed on providing us with funding for the Greenwood School roof, which has been
Yes.
badly needed for
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah, that's
Which will happen next
that
year.
we could get up to. Well, that's going to have to be done fairly quickly. In fact, the feasibility portion of that needs to be done by the end of September, I believe. If I
Mhm.
have my dates right. And that's up to, if we could get 50% or thereabouts of that repair.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty good deal because we knew we had to do that. And
Right.
I'll throw out numbers just because it's an easy number to think about. If it's $1 million,
Mhm.
and I don't think it's going to be that high, but if it is, then 50% of that is better than that coming from the state is better than all coming from us.
Sure.
So
Sure.
that's a
Absolutely.
huge issue. We were lucky to get that in because that's been on the capital plan for a long time, and getting a big portion of that covered by the state is.
And the roof hasn't been getting any better.
No,
over
it's not
time.
getting any better. It doesn't improve with age, unlike us.
Hopefully it'll get brand new.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Joe,
So-
thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
And
I appreciate it.
congratulations
Thank you.
and best wishes in the job.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, David.
Steve, thank you. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next month.